Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. We will be continuing with the lecture series, and now we will be starting lecture 5. We are skipping lecture 4, alright, just to give you a heads up, alright. So today is going to be healthcare systems and health service. Now, basically there are three main systems we need to know: budgetary, fund, and private. Charity is outdated. Alright, this was basically a system in which religion and people of knowledge used to be in charge. Now we focus on budgetary, fund, and private. When we talk about healthcare systems, we need to be aware that there are always three people in the conversation: the individual, the healthcare provider, and the government or private sector. Alright. The health provider, of course, provides the specific healthcare, alright, from a hospital, perhaps, or a certain insurance system with their health insurance packages, for example, the NHIF, and of course, government funded or private funded systems. Funding can be governmental or non-governmental. So obviously governmental means funded by the government. We have centralized and decentralized. Centralized is funding coming from one authoritative source like the US. That's an example. Decentralized is basically there is a distribution. It's not coming from one authoritative person. Basically, regions get to decide how they see fit to distribute the funding. Example, Italy or the UK. Italy has 21 different regions. UK has NHS England, NHS Scotland. Non-governmental funding. Here we have health funds. I'm not too sure what health funds are. People have mentioned sick funds or hospices, but I can't give you a definite answer. Private is out-of-pocket payments. Donations is things like charities or GoFundMe or these kind of schemes. Alright, let's move on. First, our first model or first healthcare system. This is the state budgetary system. State budgetary system. So basically this is a type of governmental funding in which the national budget of which comes from the taxpayer, and these come from, just get a different color, from the taxpayers. Alright, so these are the individuals, the companies, companies, they all chip in and they chip into the national budget. This national budget is distributed amongst different sectors. Alright, sector 1, sector 2, sector 3. Maybe one sector is agriculture, another is military. But basically, one portion goes to healthcare. So an example of this type of system is the UK, of which we have the national insurance and the national insurance contribution, which comes from the wages. The pros here: it's free for everyone. Think of the NHS, equal rights, so no one has any inequality. There is no inequality here. And it's well funded if the economy is good, and better geographical coverage. This is basically because the government is responsible for service distribution. All right, the population would not be happy if this wasn't the case. What are the cons of this? Well, one of which is irregular funding. Now, this can be a problem because, well, in the UK we have something called the postcode lottery. Basically, certain areas can have more funding than other areas due to something called CCGs, clinical commissioning groups. They are responsible for service distribution, and so they can allocate funding towards different areas of the country depending on needs. Second, no mechanism of self-management. Basically, people think the government is responsible to help you. That's not the case. You have to help yourself. So this is the reason why things like A&E is overrun. So this is the idea. Next, no external stimuli for users. All right. So basically, this talks about basically there's less wages and more hours, and so you can have more tired doctors, less motivated doctors, less motivated. All right. Let's move on. We have now the second type of insurance system. This is more associated to the Bulgarian health system. Here it's the same kind of concept with the budgetary. People pay into a pot, but this pot here is the insurance fund pot. All right, so basically what's happened here is the state has granted healthcare services to be provided by independent insurance funds. So the government has granted healthcare services to be provided by independent insurance funds. All right. So they've given that responsibility to the insurance fund. Now, the only way this system can work is if there's more than one type of insurance system. So obviously you're all aware that here we have the National Health Insurance Fund, but I'm sure that there are other funding systems, all right, within Bulgaria, such as voluntary health insurance funds and different funds, insurance funds, institutions, and this idea of competition is the reason why this works. All right, so healthcare is provided by insurance funds, which is passed down from the government. Now, because the government has allowed this, these insurance funds can be governmentally owned. So it doesn't mean they're private, but some can be private. So we have government owned, we have privately owned, and we have mixed. All right. Now, just to summarize, these insurance funds basically, let's imagine the National Health Insurance Fund, or any other fund, right? And by the way, if I'm saying anything wrong, then please tell me. All right, because I'm not 1,000,000% I don't think I'm 1,000,000% right in this, but this is from my knowledge. So these insurance funds give insurance packages. All right, they give insurance packages, and people pay these packages and they receive certain services. I'm thinking also you can apply this to the US, and obviously in the US you get Medicare and you also get Medicaid, if that makes things easier to visualize and comprehend. Oh yeah, and another thing, and if you didn't also remember, the employer-employee relationship, the employer basically 8% of its wages go towards the insurance fund, and from this we can split this, and this split consists of a 60-40 ratio. 60%, 40%, 60% to the employer, 40% to the employee. This is the ratio of which the 8% goes towards insurance funds. There are some governmental exceptions to this. So the exceptions here, let's find a space, or exemptions, is if you're number 1 under 18, if you're number 2 above 60, or number 3 if you are under 26 but you are in education. Now let's move on to the pros. Alright, so here you get Social Security. So obviously the employers, they can advertise, different goodies, health insurance, social pensions, pension insurance. Alright, so you can get Social Security with your job. And the negatives, one of which is difficult coordination, just because there's not a fixed regulatory system, because costs can change depending on the basically what the insurance system decide to charge you. So yeah, it's usually a higher administrative cost. Now let's move on to the final system, the private healthcare system here. Now this is independent of the state, So in this system, the individual can apply for the private insurance. Alright, the employer can apply. And these private insurance companies basically, through their packages, again, can give you services. However, here you have a wider range of services available, and it's more customizable. You can choose freely what services you want and what services you do not want. that's pretty much the gist of the private healthcare system. All right. Now, what is the differences here between the health funds insurance and the private? So basically, the Bulgarian type system and something like a US style system, as the US has a lot of private insurance companies. So here, something like the National Health Insurance Fund is actually compulsory. All right. And like I mentioned before, there is co-funding, so there's exemptions to the rule. You know, if you're in a vulnerable position, you can receive co-payments, you can receive reduced payments for your healthcare. But with a private system, this is, of course, voluntary. You don't have to choose, okay? However, this is the important part. Not only are you free to choose if you want the healthcare system, if you want the private healthcare system. However, the private healthcare system is also free to decide if they want you. They can decide, you know what, we don't want you as an applicant, because this is actually common practice in, say, countries like the US. Say if you're someone who's, kind of obese, maybe have diabetes, and you apply for health insurance, okay, these guys are going to be like, you know what, you're very risky, you're definitely likely to cash out and take our money. We don't want that, so we'll rather just reject you altogether because you're a risk to our business. And this is more of a business oriented healthcare system. All right. Now, moving into the organization of the healthcare system, we have three main levels, you could say, or three compartments. First, we have the legislative, administrative bodies. Next, the medical establishment. Third, the healthcare establishment. Hopefully, these ring a bell. Medical establishment, healthcare establishment. All right. So start with the legislative, management, and administrative body. Here you have three main players. Number one, you have the National Assembly. Number two, you have the Council of Ministers. And number three, you have the Minister of Health. All right. Now, as we know, the National Assembly, what they do is they adopt the NHS, the National Health Strategy. They adopt the National Health Strategy. The role of the National Assembly is to basically vote for health laws. So, National Assembly is basically voting for health laws. All right. So they vote for health laws. Secondly, we have the Council of Ministers. Now, the Council of Ministers, what they do, or what's important here is the Council of Ministers adopt the NHP, the National Health Program. All right, the National Health Program. So what happens here is basically the Council of Ministers adopt health policies. So I'm actually going to draw two pictures here. One of a television, because of the programs, and health policies. So they adopt health policies and they adopt the National Health Program. All right. So finally, we have the Ministers of Health. So these guys, what they do. So the Ministers of Health determine health policies. All right. So it's kind of weird, but let's just say they determine health policies. However, the Council of Ministers adopt the policies. Minister of Health determines it, Council of Ministers adopt it. All right. So those are your three bodies. Now, moving on to medical establishment. All right. So, medical establishment. This basically is, well, the definition is where doctors and non-medical doctors and assistants perform various activities, of which it can be things like diagnosis, transplant, neonatal, maternal, and etc. I think I posted a video in my practical playlist, so definitely check that out. So within the medical establishment, you have firstly medical establishment for non-stationary care. Non-stationary care. And if you can remember, this consists of things like the ambulatory for primary medical care. All right. Your primary ambulatory care for the specialized medical care. Specialized. And also this included your independent medical diagnostic and your medical technical lab, and you also had your dental centers. It's definitely a lot to learn. So with ambulatory for primary, you had primary, let's put it in a different color. You had your primary or individual care. Yeah, you had your individual care and you had your group. I'm not going to go into the meanings behind each. Ambulatory, again, for specialized now, you had individual, you had group, you had medical and dental centers, and you had your diagnostic and consultative centers. All right, each of these, of course, have their unique characteristics. And then the independent medical diagnostic. This basically is where we have different compartments within this lab. All right, we have things like clinical labs and radiological departments. So basically, we have many departments here. All right, there's 3 of them, 3 departments you need to know: clinical lab, radiological department, manager with health management qualifications, finally dental centers. Actually, yeah, I'm getting way too ahead of myself. I forgot there's a lot more different types of medical establishments. That was all part of the non-stationary, and of course we have the stationary inpatient curve as well. Now with hospital medical establishment for specialized medical care, you have basically 4 types that you need to know. All right, so you can have medical establishments based on treatment, med establishment for specialized medical care. You can have this based on treatment, based on profile, based on whether it's a uni or non-uni hospital, and 4 on its area. So yeah, I'm just going to quickly go through this. And finally, we have others. Others consist of different types of medical centers, and there's around 9 to 10 of them that you need to know, including things like emergency medical care, mental health centers, and that sort of thing. So yeah, definitely a lot of things there. And finally, we have the healthcare establishments. Basically, the definition is where medical and non-medical specialties give protection and promotion to the health of the citizens through these different institutions, you can say. So the 4 or 5 types of health establishments you need to know is, number 1, you need to know something called the NCPHA, the National Center for Public Health Affairs. You just gotta trust me on this one, guys. I know it's a lot of information, but yeah, we just gotta know it. Second one, something called the NE. Now, this differs amongst different sources. It's a NEMC or a NEPC. So what this is just get another color. So what this is the National Experts Physician Commission. National experts for both of them. National expert. And this one is the Physician Commission. All right, and this one, I don't even know what that is. I've just seen it. All right. So yeah, sorry about that. And we have two more. The third one we need to know is health and dental offices. All right. Finally, we have our optician and our pharmacies. All right. So we have our dentists and health. We have our opticians and our pharmacies. Okay. We have the National Expert Physician Commission and we have the National Center for Public Health Affairs. All right. And so yeah, I've basically covered all those different slides there and slides that wasn't included. Here, this is just a demarcation of the change in the health system in Bulgaria prior to 2000 and after 2000. So before, the model was a budgetary system like what the UK is, but now it's a health funds insurance system. All right. So here you have to get health insurance. It was a centralized system, now it's decentralized. And it's based on pseudo market principles, all right? So it's not regulated per se. Here we see the pyramid of healthcare going from general to specialized, tertiary being specialized in one particular area, like a hospital called Selena. It's in speciality. The speciality of Selena is in obs and gynae, I think, if I can remember correctly. And yes, you have your primary healthcare, of which the GP is the gateway towards more specialist care. Secondary, you have more specialized care, all right, in your hospitals. And finally, these are just, again, healthcare services. And here we can see that healthcare services can be free of charge. All right, especially within the budgetary system of Bulgaria. As you'll see in later lectures, maternity care, especially, has with it different laws and legislations given to pregnant women, and not only pregnant women, but pregnant women that are uninsured as well, and also kids, and you'll see later on different priorities given to different people. Public health insurance, all right, so this is just about how you expect services to be delivered from the NHIF framework, all right, and you have the option of private health insurance being out-of-pocket payments, so you can have VIP kind of treatment or cosmetic treatment, you know. And finally, charities, as we mentioned, you know, donations, things like GoFundMe's and other associations and organizations. Now, I think that is, yeah. I'm just double checking if I missed anything. Have I missed anything? No. All right. So, yeah, that's been the 5th lecture in Social Medicine Part 2, the 5th lecture. Yeah, it's definitely a heavy information packed lecture, but you gotta do what you gotta do, don't you? You just gotta learn it. And hopefully, this lecture had made sense. And yeah, see you in the next video.